Hey everybody, welcome to Friday. Hope you're looking forward to a great weekend of cycling coming up. And alrighty, today you're just going to be ripping through hopefully the remainder of the manifesto of embarrassment for Hambini, that is his blog post trying to assassinate ZFC, and correcting each point as we go. I know it's been it's been quite a number of episodes in the series, so this is I think episode 5, but obviously I was always going to correct every point that needed correcting properly and thoroughly, and there has just been so much utter BS and dishonesty and just outright engineering embarrassment to need to correct that. Yeah, it's been quite a series, so thank you for those that have been following along and providing great support. And let's get into today. We are up to here. Fundamental flaws in measuring chain wear to presume friction. Additionally, both representatives highlighted a critical flaw in Keren's methodology, so still looping in his chain experts from Reynolds and Cedars. His assumption that chain wear can be directly correlated to friction. Even his email signature implies a close connection between the two, saving you watts of friction otherwise eating your drivetrain. The reality is that a lubricant can demonstrate low friction and yet still perform poorly in wear tests, particularly if the testing setup is biased towards a straight chain with high damping characteristics as seen in Keren's rig. This fundamental misunderstanding undermines the validity of his tests and casts serious doubt on any claims made regarding lubricant performance based on this flawed approach. Right, yes, I do imply a strong correlation between friction and wear, and that is hardly a novel correlation that I came up with. This is obviously a very widely accepted correlation, not just in bicycle chain lubricants, but across pretty much every type of machine part and anything that needs lubricant. Now, there are going to be, I guess, finite limits. So there can be times, and this is clearly stated, that due to other friction loss components that a lubricant can deliver, such as higher or lower stiction from one lubricant to another, higher or lower viscous friction from one lubricant to another, that this is a big part of why we can't draw a direct correlation between the wear rate and the lubricant's outright efficiency. So chains have a lot of moving parts, and they're moving a lot. So each chain has basically 8 separate parts that are going to move from static to articulating or reticulating. And if you're pedaling it around 90-95 cadence in your large chain ring, there's going to be about 40,000 articulations and reticulations a minute, each with 8 separate pieces that are moving from static to articulating. So call it around 300,000 individual pieces of friction movement per minute going on in your chain as you're zooming along at 90 cadence in your large chain ring. So it is a lot of action happening. Some of that is happening under low load, some of that is happening under very high pressure load. So performance differences in lubricants between their stiction, because there's just so many, even a very small difference in stiction or viscous friction, you multiply a very small number by say 300,000, you can still get to a notable difference. And that is why if two lubricants, if we were to say look at a lubricant with like a 10% wear rate in say dry block 2 and a 30% wear rate in dry block 2, it is potentially possible that the lubricant with a 30% wear rate, due to just outstanding performance in extremely low stiction and extremely low viscous friction, maybe its outright efficiency is very similar to the 10% lubricant, especially if that 10% wear lubricant happened to be like a really thick, highly viscous lubricant, such as like a really thick e-bike lubricant potentially. But there are going to be limits. At the end of the day, at a point, the high pressure abrasive friction that is responsible for eating through the hardened steel parts of your chain, that is going to be by far the dominant friction component, and it's going to start to dwarf any other potential losses such as stiction and viscous friction. So there can be only so much wear gap before we can say, look, it's just really unlikely that this lubricant that ate through half of the chain's wear life in that block versus this lubricant that protected it from pretty much anywhere. It's just a really difficult, bow to draw, or line to draw, to say that the lubricant that ate through half of the chain would be just as efficient or more efficient than the lubricant that protected the chain from wearing at all, or extremely low wear. So now I can't define that limit because it's going to vary between any two particular lubricants, and each of those would have to be outright efficiency tested by a very precise lab like such as Ceramic Speed's Denmark Research Lab, after the end of, say, each block, to get a really strong picture between any two lubricant comparison as to have we surpassed that point of friction versus wear rate. However, we have over time had a lot of chains tested, and I managed to get a whole bunch off to a company called Flair, who set up the exact same equipment as Friction Facts. They were developing their own lubricant, and in the early days of ZFC, we sent a whole lot of chains off to them to get tested in their outright efficiency lab. And what do you know? There's an extremely strong correlation between the lubricants that we tested that had very high wear rates also being efficiency tested with really, really poor efficiency loss results. Some of them are as high as like 19 watts loss, which is, compared to, say, a good performing lubricant at around 5 watts loss, that's a really, really big difference. And again, it's just not going to be an earth-shattering correlation to say that a high level of wear of hardened steel components is going to result in that coming from a high amount of friction versus lubricants that are not eating through your chain. So, what are Hambini and his chain experts actually trying to contest here? That there isn't a link between friction and wear rates, especially when it comes to lubricant performance on metal components? Like, it makes zero sense to contest that link. And at the end of the day, if they wanted to have a think about it, they would arrive at the place that I just explained to you there in 5 minutes. And now after that 5 minutes, you understand that there can be a crossover point in lubricant versus wear versus efficiency loss performance based on what is the actual wear rate versus what is the viscous friction differences between the two versus what's the stiction differences between the two. But that there's going to be a fairly finite limit on where that crossover is going to be before a very high wear rate is going to knock any amount of outstanding stiction and viscous friction performance by the other lubricant out of the park, that it just cannot compete if it's rapidly eating through hardened steel. How do experts in this field and a supposedly qualified engineer not arrive at this point after 10 minutes of thought? It makes no sense. And again, if you wanted to find out a bit more about what our thoughts are around testing that is wear correlation based and it's linked to friction and efficiency losses, he could have asked me and we could have had a chat about it and we'd arrive at this point. So if I duck back to his sentence that says the reality is that a lubricant can demonstrate low friction and yet still perform poorly in wear tests, there's just going to be obviously a limit to that. Is he thinking about a sewing machine oil versus a chain dipped in truck grease? Potentially over a period of time, if the very light, so a lubricant that's going to have very low stiction and very low viscous friction, so its outright efficiency measure may be up to a certain load point or power quite high. But longer term, due to the fact that it's a very light, very thin lubricant, it could exhibit higher wear rates than a chain that is being hot dipped in truck grease, which is going to be a stiction and viscous friction nightmare, but largely protecting the chain from wear. Is that what he's thinking? Is that what blows the correlation apart? Because it's just not a very valid example or correlation within the range of what we're testing. We will see if a lubricant is so light that its viscous friction might be outstanding, its stiction performance might be outstanding. It just simply isn't going to survive the test interval lengths within the ZFC test, and it's going to be quite high wear. And if it's going to deliver high wear, then it is going to be classed obviously as a poor performing product. Maybe that lubricant would do great in a 20-kilometer time trial. Is that the point of his argument? That's not what we're here for. There are other testing facilities that do outright efficiency testing. So, what is he trying to tear down with the wear rate correlation testing and trying to debunk a link between friction and wear? And just, covering off those other stupid parts of the paragraph. particularly if the testing setup is biased towards a straight chain, which it's not. It is more often on a chain line angle than straight, even though the chain line angles are not extreme. It is not just a straight line test. And with high damping characteristics. What is he on about? Like a low viscosity thick e-bike lube is going to have a huge amount more damping than an immersive wax once that immersive wax treatment is broken in and we just have a very thin layer of wax coating the parts inside the chain. A lot of wet lubricants, you're going to actually have a quieter, smoother feeling chain than an immersive wax chain because you have a very thin layer of a solid lubricant in between metal parts. It actually takes energy to perform the sound dampening that the heavier wet lubes do. So he has tried to link before that it's biased towards immersive waxes due to chain vibration and dampening, and he is absolutely, completely incorrect. The opposite is true on both of those points for immersive wax versus especially your heavier wet lubricants. Again, he just does not know a single thing about what he's talking about in the field of chain lubrication. And if you've seen his bike and his bike chain, that might make sense. Alright, so summary on all that, because I know it's a bit of a long one, but yeah, there's just so much wrong and so much crap in that paragraph to correct properly. But yeah, obviously the whole dampening thing, he's got it backwards and doesn't know what he's talking about, and he would be incorrect even if wax was more dampening. It still has no impact. The dampening and vibration has zero influence or impact on the chain's wear rates. He's off on a wild goose chase, which he either is incredibly unknowledgeable about anything to do with immersive waxing, which judging by the previous video would seem very likely, or if he has any basic knowledge, what is he trying to twist and how? Like, it is just utter rubbish. Same with the straight chain line thing. It wouldn't make a difference even if the entire test was on a straight chain line, which it isn't. But again, the lubricants are designed to perform on a bicycle chain if it's running in a straight chain line or if it's running on a chain line angle. So he's just trying to bamboozle the, I guess, less knowledgeable of his audience with, more gobbledegook speak that he doesn't know what he's on about. And the friction versus wear correlation, obviously aside from the whole finite limits that we've discussed there between different products and their outright efficiency versus wear rate, quite clearly beyond a finite point, if a lubricant, we're talking the same chains, they're Ultegra 11-speed chains, if that same chain metal is wearing at a fast rate versus a low rate, it is not a strange correlation at all. It's something that's obviously used. It's not just industry accepted, obviously across basically any industry. If they are assessing lubricant performance on any machine part, and one machine part is demonstrating very high wear on X lubricant, and one machine of the same machine part performs or has extremely low wear rate on Y lubricant, they're going to draw a correlation between X being much higher friction due to that high wear versus Y. Like, what on earth is he trying to get at and twist and fool his readers with? Alright, so just to summarize, because I know that whole section was a bit, so apologies for the length of that, but there was just so much really incorrect and utter BS in that one paragraph to need to explain properly and thoroughly, so that it's hopefully counted correctly, that it just can leave no doubt in your mind as to whom is saying the correct things. The whole dampening thing, he's just got utterly backwards, and it doesn't make any difference even if he had it correct, which he doesn't. Dampening will have zero impact on the ZFC wear correlation test. Dampening will only have an impact on a chain's noise level and its outright efficiency, which the ZFC test does not measure. Straight chain line also does not matter at all. Even if the entire test was done on the same chainring and cog and kept a straight chain line the entire test, which it doesn't, it still wouldn't matter. It's where correlation performs. The lubricant is designed to lubricate the chain effectively, obviously in a straight chain line. This test is not measuring lateral wear, so rather than if I conducted an entire test on an extreme chainline angle, all I'm going to be doing is introducing more lateral wear into what's going on. as opposed to just elongation wear. I'm not measuring lateral wear, we are using chain elongation wear. So it is a stupid, nonsensical point to keep harping on. With regards to the correlation between friction and wear, this is not a novel new correlation that I've brought to the table or the industry. It's a very basic logical correlation that is used across basically all industries when they're assessing lubricant performance. Most machine parts in most industries, they are not looking at the outright efficiency losses of that machine part. The way they are assessing lubricant performance in that particular machine part's use case is its wear over time. So lubricant X showing, say, a high amount of wear over a particular assessment time, and lubricant Y showing a very low amount of wear over a particular assessment time. Guess which one they're going to pick based on the wear rate correlation. So it is just a cross industry assessment of lubricant performance. And in most ASTM standard tests, they are, for lubricant performance, most times they are actually looking at wear scars or wear marks on the parts that are used in that particular test, be it a Timken 4-ball test or a pin on disc test, or the Brugger bearing on the grinding wheel test. They're looking for wear scars. Why is he trying to debunk a correlation between a lubricant's wear rate and its friction performance? If you have a working brain, you will know that this is a extremely strong correlation, and not going into the huge depths and basket case of all the issues around outright efficiency testing in the bicycle chain lubricant side of things in this industry, there are just so many reasons why I am using wear correlation to assess lubricant performance for the ZFC test as opposed to trying to do outright efficiency loss. So lastly on that, if he actually understood the test, which he doesn't, if he actually took the time to have a look at the data and look at how the test is conducted, he would see that in the majority of cases, a lot of lubricants that can have fairly decent wear rate performance in clean block 1 it's a completely different picture once we start introducing contamination in block 2. So if the lubricant performance degrades quite notably from block 1 to block 2, and the only difference is that we have now introduced contamination, the difference in that wear rate is due to the fact the lubricant has absorbed the contamination and become abrasive. That is why we have seen a very large increase between block 1 and block 2. If I didn't introduce contamination, then block 2 would continue along very similarly to block 1, rather obviously. So if the change in the wear rate performance from decent to now really high is due to the contamination, we know that high wear rate is going to be by increased friction and the subsequent wear by the lubricant becoming more abrasive. That's a pretty big obvious link. And if another lubricant has retained a really impressively low wear rate despite the fact that we have introduced contamination, that's a great sign for that lubricant remaining low friction just like it did in the first block. Considering that your bicycle chain and its lubricant is operating externally and exposed to a lot of contamination, unlike most machine parts out there in the world, the amount and rate at which a lubricant absorbs external contamination and becomes more abrasive is obviously extremely important to that lubricant's real-world performance. And that's what we're able to get a great picture of with the ZFC test protocol. Something that, he either does not understand because he's been extremely unprofessional to not even look and understand how the ZFC test works. And it's pretty basic. A lot of non-engineers, just normal cyclists, can have a look at the ZFC test, read the test brief if they wish, and understand it perfectly. And yet we have an engineer who doesn't understand something as basic as that, or he does understand it, but he's twisting the heck out of it deliberately for, as we know, his own dishonest reasons. I'll try to move a bit quicker through the next crap. Kieran proudly boasts in his email signature that ZFC conducts the world's most exhaustive independent testing to find and stock the best-in-class products only, saving you watts of friction that are otherwise going into eating through your drivetrain components faster. Yep. What's the point of contention there? A contentious statement that is far from the truth, really. He regularly claims to do testing on behalf of other manufacturers with suitable NDAs in force. Well, that is also true. Kieran's testing methodology is based on wear tolerance of 0.5% on his charts. 100% equates to reaching the full wear tolerance of the 0.5% chain elongation, while 200% indicates 1% chain elongation. To put this in absolute numbers, Kieran employs a KMC digital chain checker to measure wear. For a 10-link section of chain with a half-inch pitch, the nominal length is 127 millimeters and 0.5% wear responds to a 0.64 millimeter extension. The test section length is unknown but appears to be 10 or 8 links. The numbers will scale in any case. Yes, it is 8 links. Alright, he then goes and demonstrates that it appears the tool does not come with a calibration certificate or setting standard, and its claimed accuracy is 0.1 millimeters. The screen displays measurements to 0.01 millimeters. He's contradicted himself a little bit, maybe. ZFC checking tools. So Kieran claims that his testing can detect a measurable difference of 0.3% of 0.64 millimeters, equating to 0.0019 millimeters or 2 microns. However, these results are 50 times more precise than the stated accuracy of his uncertified and uncalibrated measuring equipment, which has a tolerance of plus minus 0.05 millimeters. Even a Mitsutoyo caliper, the benchmark in the industry, has a certified accuracy of plus minus 0.02 millimeters, which is still far less precise than the accuracy Kieran is asserting. This does not take into account the level of user error associated with such devices either. When extrapolated over the full length of a chain of 116 links, approximately 1.47 meters, he asserts that his setup can detect a variance of just 0.22 millimeters, the thickness of 2 sheets of paper, on a chain that is inherently flexible. To put this into context, Kieran is claiming his measuring equipment can detect the presence of a single rod of E. coli bacteria, 2 microns, on the bike chain over 10 links. And he shows there on his chart a 0.3% wear measure. Excellent. Again, if only he had bothered to contact me to chat with me about the chain wear measuring. It would be a lot less embarrassing for him than pulling some E. coli out of his butt. So, how do we measure the chain wear? So the picture he's pulled here is just me. It was probably on a chain wear checking video that I did, because that's my Aspero, and I'm just showing how people would use a chain wear checker at home by putting it into the bottom span of the chain. The rear mech is going to put some tension into the chain to pull the links apart, and so that's general best practice on using, be it a digital checker like this, or if it's a drop-in checker, to use the bottom span of the chain. However, for the ZFC test, we do things slightly differently. I was going to go and do a video of it. I can do that in the future if we need, but for today's purposes, because it's already going to run long, I'll just talk you through it. But just keep that little image in mind, transpose that in your mind to the top span of chain, and we'll flick back to me as I talk through it. Right, use the top span of chain because with the Neo still set on 250 watt load, when I put the KMC digital checker into the span of chain that I am testing and I get a read, I will then be able to put a fairly strong amount of force into the crank because the Neo is set to 250 watt load. So I basically put the amount of force in that is just going to get that chain to start to move, and that's going to put a lot of pull tension in the chain, so that all parts in the chain are going to be pulled apart very strongly. And we want that, especially as the test goes on. There can be a build-up of lubricant within the chain, and contamination that's also built up in the lubricant starting to gum up the chain parts. We really need to put a pretty strong force into the chain, get everything pulled apart as much as possible, and get the most accurate read as I can from the chain checker. The KMC digital chain checkers do measure, they basically measure in graduations of 0.01 of a millimeter. So that is a great level of accuracy that we're getting from that checker. I have 3. I use 2 for each test. So one is the main tool for the test and the other is a backup. And they are both used at each check measure, but if everything is concurring with each other, then I only need to record the one set of numbers on the running sheet. What I do is I will start with the first insertion point of the KMC checker will be basically one link over from the master link on the chain, and I get that check measure and record it. I will then move across basically 6 links, so 3 inner links, 3 outer links, and repeat, and I do 7 check measures because chains never wear evenly, and I need to check the wear variance between sections that it's not beyond the test variance. So once that is done and I have my 7 measures, I'm then going back to the initial measure and double checking that I get the same measure. So again, I'm putting it back into the one link over from the master link, and I'm looking to get the same measurement to 0.1 accuracy as I got the first time. I then repeat that entire process with the second tool. I don't always get to the 0.01 accuracy, but if I don't get to 0.01, the worst it's been in 8 years has been 0.02. So no, there's no certificate of calibration with the KMC digital checkers, but we really don't need one. And also I guess, even if there's a concern, is it really 0.01 of a mil accurate? Is it really even 0.02 of a mil accurate? Again, the chains do not wear evenly. The biggest variance in the test and in the check measure is the chain itself. So especially as the tests go on, the differences in one section of chain to another, they're going to grow to 0.05 of a mil difference, to 0.08, to 0.1 of a mil. So we're going to have a 20% difference in wear from one section of chain to another. That's the big variance, not whether the KMC checker is 0.01 of a mil accurate or 0.02. So how do we get to that 0.03% wear mark that he ended up in an E. coli analogy? Oh, sorry, just one point that I forgot to mention. The reason why I use the KMC digital checkers as opposed to Mitutoyo calipers, which I also have, is that the KMC digital checkers, they have their own internal spring, which is great because the digital checker is going to be pushing itself apart. Rather than me, if I'm using digital calipers, I need to be trying to apply a consistent force with my thumb on the wheel in the span that I'm measuring, whilst also putting force down onto the crank to pull the chain links, strongly apart, just through the top span chain tension. So I would be kind of trying to juggle 2 points of force at once, whereas with the KMC digital checker, it's doing the one part for me. I only need to concentrate on putting the amount of tension load into the top span that is going to just about to start to move the crank against that 250 watt resistance load. That's pulling it very strongly apart. The digital checker is doing the rest for me, 2.01 mil accuracy. And yeah, these tools have been great for a very, very long time. So yeah, I have always feared I would be introducing more variance, trying to do the same with the Mitutoyo calipers in putting pressure on, ensuring the prongs are putting a nice amount of force into each roller insertion, whilst also putting force into the top span of the chain. That's why I went with the KMC versus calipers. Now back to the E. coli. If only Hambini was able to do, I think it's about year 5 math. So at each check measure, I'm measuring 7 different spans of chain. And each of those 7 spans is recorded, and then the average of those 7 measures is the wear rate mark for that check measure. So for instance, if a check measure, it's 0.31, another section is 0.29, and another section is 0.3, and another section is 0.8, and another section is 0.32. And after 7 measures, the average of those 7 is 0.3. That is the check measure for that particular end of block wear mark. The one that he highlighted in the table there had a check measure for block 2 of 0.3%, and he's saying, well, across an entire chain, that equals an E. coli's length, and how am I possibly measuring to that accuracy? Again, if you just understood that check measure process and could do basic math, if the check measure for block 2, the average of that was only basically 0.01 of a mil average higher than the check measure for block 1, and I divide 0.01 of a mil into the 0.5 millimeter wear allowance, we have basically rounding up to our 0.3% measure. Let me demonstrate that in case that was hard to follow along. So just sort of work through in text. So yeah, if the check measure results for the 7 sections of chain is 0.27, 0.3, 0.28 and so on, blah, 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 then the average result would be 0.29 in that example I've typed there. In the case we see a 0.3% measure, that would be the super rare case where the average for the next block's check measure was only 0.1 millimeter greater than the average of the previous check measure, the smallest amount possible being a 0.0% measure if the measures equal the same average due to there being no measurable wear. This can happen a bit in with the immersive waxes, where the check measure at the end of block 1 is the same as the check measure prior to the start of test on the perfectly strip clean chain. So it's just basic math that even I can do and that you can do. So the actual test variance I use to make it easy is 0.5 millimeter, which across an 8-link span of chain is equal to 8 times 12.7 millimeters, which is 101.6 millimeter. 0.5 millimeter divided by 101.6 is 0.492%. So 0.5 meter test wear allowance, checking across an 8 span, is extremely close to the 0.5% general recommended wear mark to replace your chain. 0.01 millimeter wear measure difference across the average of 7 measures between the two check measures, 0.01 divided by 0.5 equals 0.2%. So in the Excel running sheet formula, a 0.3% measure must have therefore been rounded up from further decimals in the averages. Considering, as stated, we are looking for notably larger wear measure variances to tell us anything, I don't give a flying Lord Farquhar if it's 0% or 0.3% or 2.3%. I'm barely taking notice if it is 5.3%. That is still a tiny amount of wear difference. So yeah, once again, Hambini has just been extremely unprofessional to, I guess, attack a part of the zero friction cycling testing that he hasn't even bothered to take the time to understand how it's done. If he understood how it was done, he would understand very simply how we get those very small check measure percentage differences. It is like literally grade 5 math, if that. Instead, he's arrived at a very strange place where I am supposedly measuring to the accuracy of E. coli across the entire length of the chain. He's either, again, just not checked and made a complete and utter fool of himself, because it is pretty darn stupid to attack something you don't even understand yourself and haven't taken the time to understand. Or if he has looked at how I do the chain wear checking, he has tried to, again, rather dishonestly twist that into something that it isn't. I hope you've been able to follow along with that and see how understand how the check measuring is done and the basic maths that sit behind those wear rate percentages. In summary, he can take his E. coli and shove it back up his clacker from whence it came. Conclusion. We must be almost there. Karen has expressed reluctance to adhere to established engineering principles. So, I mean, what is he referring to that I'm refusing to adhere to? There is no ASTM or other standards testing for bicycle chain lubricants. And it's a pretty solid engineering correlation between friction and wear, as we have covered. Choosing instead to develop his own testing methods that align with his business interests. So again, look, that is just such a dishonest way to try and frame things. The business interest was, can we actually have testing that is of great use to cyclists the world over? Because, especially as things keep going up and up and up, something as simple as the humble bicycle chain lubricant has the biggest effect on your cost to run. If a lubricant is going to eat through your very expensive drivetrain parts rapidly or protect them from wear, that's a big interest for everybody, from racers to just cyclists around the world. So could we have a test that was not just a short clean lab based test, but one that goes for thousands of kilometers and includes both dry and wet contamination? That testing is very labor intensive and not the cheapest to try to conduct. So from day one, we had tried a business model of using, could it work that if we have a retail side that stocks and recommends the genuine best products that we find from testing, will that be enough to cover the cost of actually getting the testing done? And in time, when we've built up a sufficient league table and have enough data value there for comparison between products, would manufacturers start to use the zero friction cycling testing as part of their own independent assessment of their product's performance, either before they go to market as part of development or after they've gone to market, to try to get independent assessment for marketing purposes? So for this testing to exist, and this data and this information to exist, that is the business model. They're like, find another independent bicycle chain lubricant test facility that's doing it for free. There is not one. Every single one of them has to charge the manufacturers to conduct their testing, and then the data isn't open. What you get is manufacturers who use the other independent testing facilities, which are providing just outright efficiency testing, and they are very short, usually pretty much almost always, I believe, clean lab-based testing. So how much use is that to you if you're going to take it out into the world where there is contamination? So what will typically happen though is, say, a manufacturer might pay to have their product tested, and let's say 10 competitors. We can have 4 of those competitors that actually beat the client that is requesting the testing, but they're not going to go to the market showing, hey, we came, out of all lubricants tested, we came 5th. What they'll do is they'll go to market showing that they are the number 1 product out of 5 other lubricants tested or 6 other lubricants tested, and obviously not go to market with the 4 products data that beat them in the testing. Is that more independent? Is that more open and better data for everybody out there? Whereas with the zero friction cycling testing, the test result is the test result, and the product will slot in on the league table where it achieves with regards to its wear rates. And it will rank, obviously, as to exactly how those wear rates go and where it slots in. So the issue with all of that versus any other facility in this space offering testing services is what precisely? There can be some other, like the only other, I think, testing facility that I personally rate as doing an outstanding job and has, mostly free data still for people is, say, bicycle rolling resistance. But they have a membership model, so you pay a monthly subscription to get access to some deeper data, and then they also rely on advertising. But again, their test to test the tire is a much faster process than what can often be 4 to 8 weeks to conduct a test of a bicycle chain lubricant. I cannot follow that same model. So the model that we've had, which has been open since the beginning, is the one that we need for this to actually exist. And the percentage of people that find something not right about that are the type of people that are either A, Hambini trying to do a hatchet job, or B, the type of person that's never met a conspiracy that they didn't love. If you want to buy the genuine best products that are backed by the most exhaustive independent test, you know where you can go and find that data and those product recommendations. Let's just for a moment switch or turn the spotlight around a little bit. So everything about ZFC, the testing, the business model, the whole lot, everything has been open since day one. Hambini has tried to push out to the world that hybrid ceramic bearings are an industry-wide con based on testing that still remains secret. How many products has he aero tested? Which is like quite a simply unbelievable amount. And recommended and pushed various products and completely shot down others based on testing that still remains secret. And how many times has it been in his own interest to shoot down a product, again, drama and clicks, or push other product recommendations? How many times has Hambini criticized other companies for not having open test protocols, and yet both his bearing and his own aero testing remain secret? I mean, hypocrisy doesn't even begin to scratch the surface. I think, again, for anyone with a working brain, we clearly step from outright hypocrisy to outright dishonesty without even taking a very big step at all. To be independent, selling products while asserting independence presents a conflict of interest. So again, like I just covered there, what the hell does he do? And no, the testing is what sits behind the products that we stock and recommend. It appears that his testing is used as a promotional tool to enhance his credibility and encourage potential buyers to trust his results. I mean, the testing is the testing. The results that come from that are the results. And so very slowly over 8 years, I've gone from stocking 1 lubricant to about 10 lubricants, the 10 best found to date from all that testing. The best lubricants found from all that testing effort deserve to be promoted by ZFC, and the worst performing products and companies found from the testing deserve to be highlighted as very concerning. That is obviously 2 massive drivers behind doing the testing. And I mean, obviously he does exactly the same on his products. The difference between us is that the products I highlight either way is based on honesty and open testing. He has been shown many times to dishonestly attack good brands and products for his own reasons and to promote other brands based on who knows what or for his own dollars. So despite stating that his work is a hobby and that he could shift to something else at any time, his actions suggest a strong focus on marketing products that can be quickly sold, sometimes at the expense of thorough engineering research. Again, it has always been a hobby business. It's a hobby business. It is one that I started part-time. In the early days, it was relatively easy to work part-time. As the business grew, there came a point where it was taking up too much time, and so I put a retail manager on to help with the retail side. And I have an awesome IT and website lady who does that work in the background, because otherwise it would be not my part-time hobby business. But it's always been a hobby business. I can't spend so many hours a year just of my own time volition when I've got other things in my life to also do for free. And Hambini is probably not aware that I actually released last year's financials, which was our best financials to date, and we made a total of 11% net margin. It may not surprise you that selling bicycle chain lubricants and bicycle chains, they are not a real high margin, quick dollar area. And again, if I was going to maximize selling products quickly, immersive waxing is not the way to go. So obviously a big focus of the ZFC products that we sell always circles back to immersive waxing, because immersive waxing generates the most questions, the most myths, the most misconceptions, work that I'm always correcting, information that I'm always correcting. If I wanted to avoid a lot of that work, I would just sell drip lubricants. But neither drip lubricants nor chains as your retail store, and that is pretty much all we sort of focus on, aside from things that are adjacent to that, such as quick links and so on. That is not the path to fast, massive riches. I think you can see what he's trying to do with his paragraphs there. With regards to that I can stop any time, yes, I can. I'm really lucky in that I have the option to be able to do that. I'm doing this for, I guess, as long as I find it fun, and as long as I feel that I can make a positive contribution, to this area that I'm putting my time and effort and energy into. If it reaches a point where I've just had enough and it's not fun anymore, or I just don't really think that I can positively contribute to the cycling world through the work that I'm doing, it's going to be time for me to, hang up ZFC and step away and do something else. And I'm very fortunate that I have the option to be able to do that anytime. It's also great, for anything like this, when you've got somebody like a Hambini out there who's trying to do a hatchet job on your company. I can fight back honestly and properly. To me, if it was to all blow up in the wrong way, and ZFC was to be cancelled or just completely attacked into oblivion by Hambini and his minions, if I lost the lot by pushing back like I'm doing here, I can take that risk. So I've kind of got, in a way, I've got a free shot to fight back against terrible people like him in the industry that shouldn't get away with doing what they're doing. And hopefully it works, but if it doesn't, I'm okay. I think just judging on the support so far, it's going really well, and hopefully that will continue. And I'll hopefully look forward to continue to keep trying to work hard and see what else we can. I feel a lot still to be learnt in this space. I also take very seriously that the fact that from the testing work that I do, You know, we've obviously seen some manufacturers that we can really highlight as manufacturers that have brought a lot of great products into this area and can be manufacturers of high trust with regards to their product quality and looking after your drivetrain. And we've also seen some manufacturers that, you know, I guess we're trying to hold some accountability to, and they're manufacturers of concern and would really like to see some changes in what they're doing, both with their products and their marketing around the products. There's a heck of a long way to go, I think, on that front. It's been really quite a slog to try to get through any or even a small percentage of the testing that I'd like to get done. There's a whole bunch of product categories that I've sort of really barely been able to touch, and there's other testing projects such as chain maintenance test project, getting back to chain wear durability testing, so that I haven't been able to get to for a lot of chain models. There's just, so much work to be done, which I think would make a positive contribution to the knowledge base that we're going to be trying to work to get to, hopefully in the coming years. But that's, all going to depend on a number of factors as to just how long I keep pushing and keep going with ZFC. It's my hobby business. I'm going to do it as my hobby business for as long as I find it fun and I can make a positive contribution. And just quickly looping back to his actions suggest a strong focus on marketing products that could be quickly sold, sometimes at the expense of thorough engineering research. I mean, what is he referencing there? There is no, longer, harder and more exhaustive test than the ZFC test. It takes typically 4 to 8 weeks to conduct a main test with a huge amount of labor and intervention, and then there's resetting the machines each time, ready for the next test. It's new parts, it's doing the data, it's liaising with the clients around the data. Every test is a huge amount of labor and time. So at the expense of thorough engineering research, what is he referencing there? Is it the fact that there is no other facility conducting testing on bicycle chain lubricants that takes remotely as long and as exhaustive per test as what I'm doing? Is that what he means? Like, just cheap shots by a just petty, dishonest man. Right. Rather than contributing to genuine knowledge, this approach seems primarily focused on crafting a narrative that maximizes sales. His disregard for established industry standards and best practices raises concerns about his commitment to the rigorous process required for reliable, credible engineering. So it's pretty much just going over the same old stuff there. Again, what does he mean by established industry standards? There is no established industry standard for bicycle chain lubricant testing. So again, he contradicts himself rather stupidly. And we've gone through, what best practices would he like to correct? Is it the bullshit crank instability being introduced by having the crank arm on there? Is it the concerns for the Neo for the motor and gearbox being on float mounts, for which there is no concern at all, or the non-existent motor slip, which would again not even concern the Neo even if there was motor slip? All that crap? Is that the credible engineering he's referring to? So this sentence here, combined with the precise results he claims to measure, are contradictory and, to put it bluntly, unbelievable. What's contradictory is that he didn't even understand or know the test variances before he started attacking the test, and that it openly states in the test brief that it is a blunt test. So blunt is not precise, and we explain with regards to obviously the variations within the chain itself being the largest uncontrollable factor. Concerns have been raised about Karen's technical knowledge and expertise, with instances suggesting a limited understanding of fundamental concepts. The concerns that have been raised have been by Hambini and a seemingly interesting cadre of friends from Reynolds and Cetus. I think you've seen covered in this series so far some rather extremely concerning instances of Hambini not understanding some extremely simple concepts with regards to what he's talking about. He's either been just obviously outright very incorrect, not knowing the subject that he's talking about when he should be if he's going to be attacking it, to just putting out absolute engineering rubbish, such as the examples I gave before. His lubricant testing setup appears to lack precision, repeatability, and proper controls, which undermines the credibility of his findings and casts doubt on the validity of any product performance claims he makes. Right, we've pretty well covered that. Lacks precision, it is a blunt tool, and the biggest variability within all that is the chain itself, but also the wear rate correlation is inherently a fairly blunt measure in itself. Proper controls, what is he talking about? I have a lot of proper controls to obviously conduct the test the exact same way every time. And the undermining credibility is basically being done by Hambini. The apparent disregard for scientific integrity and sound engineering principles is a significant concern. Karen seems more focused on marketing and same old blah 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 we covered there, so he's just rehashing the same BS that we've covered. Testing methods and conclusions should be approached with caution, as they are based on unverified procedures that appear to be designed to support his narrative rather than reflect real-world performance. Again, what does he mean by unverified? It's been now peer-reviewed by most of the industry over 8 years. And the narrative comes from the test results, as we've covered quite a lot. Disorganized nature of his test rig, combined with the precise results he claims to measure, are contradictory and, to put it bluntly, unbelievable. So chaotic nature. I mean, the fact that the motors and gearboxes, for instance, are on a float mount as opposed to a precise engineered bench, and also we have flex couplings to assist. That is perfectly functional. It is utilitarian, but it is just simply exactly what the system needs. The Neo does not care. Yes, it would look more lovely on a beautifully engineered bench, but that is just a huge expense that is completely unnecessary and is going to make zero difference to the accuracy of the test. All it is going to do is look nicer, but have cost me a huge amount more, and it's a huge amount of money that is really hard to recoup. Have a look at the video on last year's financials. If we're making 11% net margin at the end of the day, if I spend, say, $5,000 on a engineered bench to have everything mounted beautifully, $5,000 of money out to get a net $5,000 back at, say, 11% margin, that's nearly $50,000 in revenue. That's a hell of a lot of chain sales and drip lubricant and wax sales to recoup $50,000 for a completely unnecessary $5,000 spend. Times 3. So I'm not going to have to bring in an extra $150,000 worth of revenue to have a motor and gearbox and coupling look nicer for zero actual impact to the testing. It is not chaotic. It is perfectly utilitarian and functional for what it needs to do. So again, you can just shove that right back up with his E. coli. So you're just on this sentence that, combined with the precise results he claims to measure, are contradictory and, to put it bluntly, unbelievable. Well, wouldn't it have been handy for Hambini to have known what the test variances were, and that it is even openly stated that it is a blunt test? Or is he meaning the chain wear check measures, where he has either not understood how the chain wear checking takes place and therefore how those percentages are derived, or he is incapable of doing Year 5 math? Either way, he is rather embarrassingly incorrect with this sentence here yet again. Right, we've reached the end of the document. Oh my god, that's amazing. So thank you if you've stayed with it for all this time. I will have run out of time to do a summary of, I guess, all these 5 episodes, which would be nice to do because even I can barely remember now what I spoke about in episodes 1 and 2. So I think I'll take the time to do I'm going to strictly limit it to somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes to just summarize just how many points were just outright completely dishonest, how many were just so obviously twisted, misleading, how many were just embarrassingly incorrect because he either doesn't know basic knowledge and or didn't even bother to check to get the basic knowledge about the test that he's attacking, things like that. I think it'll be good and fun just to summarize all of this because, obviously I'm going to be biased because I'm the one defending myself and the work that we do here at ZFC. But, I mean, even just from, I can't actually believe he's published this document because to me it is such a manifesto of embarrassment that, I think 99% of the points were so easily dismantled and proven incorrect and just flat out wrong. And the engineering complete gobbledegook that he's put in there, thank you to, I mean, a number of actual engineers have been very kind enough to take the time to put some excellent comments on the videos so far, and just confirm that, from other engineers' perspective, that Hambini is an absolute embarrassment to the engineering world, and most especially so as such in the cycling world. And that's, from an engineering perspective, it's really bad. And then we add the outright dishonesty side of things into the equation as well. And like, the whole thing is just a disaster. So thank you, Hambini, for giving me the opportunity to, help follow on from some others who've also stood up to you in the past, and do my part to show to the cycling world, whoever watches, just how the kind of person you are, both as an engineer and as a human being. It has been my honor to go through the document and debunk all those points one by one, sentence by sentence. So yeah, all right, that'll do for this one. Next one I'll try to get to that summary, and then we get to turn the spotlight back and have a look at where it all began, which was with me asking Hambini for some information about this bearing test, because his test results did not make any sense whatsoever with reality. And from that is what sits behind this entire attempted hit piece. So that one is going to be quite fun, and you will learn a lot about hybrid ceramic bearings and steel bearings, I assure you. It will be very enlightening on that front as well. All right, that will do for rambling. Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend of cycling, and I will look forward to catching you on the next vid, which I'll try to get to, sometime next week. We'll knock out these last couple on this series, and then hopefully get back to business as normal.